anything else. Yes?
I forgot just how overweight Eglon King of the Moab
Yes.
was. And so I remember Ehud killing him. I forgot he left the sword in him, and the guy's own fat and
Engulfed it, yes.
the sword. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an impressive grade.
Yeah, and it was 18 inches to 2 foot long. Yeah. I could have been at an angle, but still, that's still a lot of, yeah.
You're not evil like that. You're not this grade. You can still walk.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was able to back then. I mean,
He's probably going to
Roll around.
It just, it's been so long since I read it, 'cause it answered a lot of those weird questions, like, how can you have gotten away? Well, the servants were sent away, the death happened, and the servants just assumed he was going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Big boy takes big bathroom breaks, so
Yeah.
you kind of wondered, it was like an hour plus.
Yeah,
before they
probably.
checked
Yeah.
on him.
and by that time, Ehud had rallied the troops and were ready to attack. So, I got just a few things that I was gonna look at. You already kind of told the story of Ehud, however you say it, I don't know. Who was the next judge? He was the first. Deborah was the second. What was unique about her?
Female and prophet.
Female, prophet. She was also a judicial judge as well as the military leader. And she heard from God, and God told her to do, told her what? Told her to tell somebody.
To kill somebody?
No, told her to tell somebody. Tell Barak, yeah, to go and defeat the, was it? I forgot which
Othniel
one.
was the first judge. And
Oh, Ahithophel, yeah, forgot about him, and then he had,
Shamgar is the third.
right,
And then Deborah.
and then Deborah, so she's the fourth one.
Yeah.
I just skipped over Shamgar. When I was, right after Sid and I got married, I was teaching, or we were teaching in the youth Sunday school area. I had the boys, she had the girls. I think we had the younger ones. I think it was the junior high, and then somebody else had the high school. But our minister of education came in on Wednesday night. We had a teachers meeting to kind of go over what we were going to do Sunday. And he came up and he said, I will teach your class for you if you can tell me who killed, what was it, 600 Philistines with an ox goad. And we're all like, that sounds familiar, but I don't know who it was. Because it just mentioned that one verse, Shamgar. Do you know what an ox goad is? Yeah, what you poke, poke the oxes with to get them to move. But it would be a long pole that was sharpened on the end. So it'd be almost like a spear, but it didn't have a spear head. It would just be a long sharpened stick. I don't know. Sometime in the past, I've gotten the idea that it was like a gourd or something that way. And I don't know why. But that's always been in my mind. And so I looked it up one day and I was like, oh, well, that makes a whole lot more sense. So I don't know if somebody in the past has said something about that, but I don't know, I had it in my mind. It was some kind of, little gourd or something that way that he killed him with. But it makes a lot more sense that way.
Yeah.
And then Deborah. Deborah told Barak, however you say it. And then what did Barak do?
I'll go if you go.
I'll go if you'll go, yeah. He wasn't going to go on his own. And so what was the response to that?
She said, okay, but you
Right, you're not going to get credit for the victory. And sure enough, he didn't. Yes. Sisera. Yes, Sisera was the general of the enemy army, and he went to the Kenites to take refuge. Now, the Kenites were descendants of Moses' father-in-law. They were friendly with the yes. Yeah, it just says Canaanites. That's all I see. But they were friendly with them as well as friendly with the Israelites. And he went there to try to find protection or whatever. But instead of going to the husband's tent, he went to the wife's tent, which was very, how would you put that? That was in trouble. Yeah, that was not the right thing to do. That was against all social norms for him to do that.
But it said Darrell actually went out and met Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in."
Yes.
He entered the tent.
So she went and invited him, but still, that's still very, it was not socially acceptable to go into somebody else's wife's tent. That's just, you didn't do that. And so what did she do? Tent peg in the temple, yeah. Not this temple, but in that temple. Yeah. Drove it, one hit, drove it right through his skull and killed him. Into the ground. She had a good arm on her to drive that tent peg all the way through. And
a footnote here on that ox goad.
Mm-hmm.
My Bible has a footnote on that ox goad.
Yes.
It says this was a stout stick about 8 to 10 feet long and 6 inches around, with a sharp metal tip to prod or turn oxen.
So it was
The
big
other
around
end
too.
was a flat curved blade for cleaning a plow.
Huh. Okay. Didn't know that either. A flat curved blade for cleaning the plow on one end and a sharp point on the other. But 6 inches around, so that's probably going to be
Say what it's made of? Wood?
about like that big
Well,
around.
yeah, it says it's a long
Stick, yeah.
stout stick, but it's got a metal tip on one end that's sharp.
I think that'd be cumbersome to,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, he had to be-
do anything.
Had to be really strong too, yeah.
I just think of the kung fu.
One of the things that I wish I could have found it, I found something similar. But in the Song of Deborah, which is chapter 5, in verse 23, it says, "Curse Meroz," said the angel of the Lord, "curse its people bitterly, because they did not come to help the Lord against the mighty." I had an interim pastor at Shawnee. I've been probably saying I've been married about 2.5 years when the pastor left, and he preached, and while he was preaching, he preached on this group of people called Meroz. And I think she brought it up. No, it wasn't her. I read it elsewhere. They were part of the tribe of Manasseh. They were close relatives of the ones that Deborah and Barak had gotten to go with them. But I'm sorry, they're not Manasseh, but they were close relatives. But they refused to go out. Not only did they refuse to go out and fight, but basically, if Barak and them would have been defeated, they would have been attacked by the Canaanites and probably destroyed just like everybody else. They couldn't say, "Oh, wait, we didn't do anything. We didn't attack you like they did." The Canaanites wouldn't have cared. And yet they refused to go. And it was definitely against the laws of God. If the army was to go out, everybody was supposed to go. all the able men, and yet these people refused. What does that teach us today? I told you all, we are in the midst of a battle right now, right? And if we're not on the offensive, we're not out there, following God and doing what He's called us to do, then we're just like the people of Miraz. And it says, this is probably the worst thing that could be said. It says, curse Miraz, curse its people bitterly. I mean, this was probably the worst way to say a curse in the Bible. I mean, curse them bitterly because they refused to follow God, refused to go out and fight. And yet, how many of us do the same kind of thing? We need to be out doing what God has called us to do. Like I said, I wish I had his sermon. I have the notes someplace, but I couldn't find them. I don't think I've ever gotten rid of them. But it was one of those things that it made an impression on me back then.
There's one of the things that was brought out that it's even carrying on today, and that is that God told them when they went in to possess this land, they were to completely destroy
Yes.
those people. Well, Manasseh didn't, in the conquest of his land, didn't do that, and he wasn't the only one.
Right.
Others didn't either.
Right.
But just as soon as they let them go ahead and live among them, and then when the godly leaders left out, they went back to serving the gods of these
Right.
people that they had left alive.
Yep. Exactly what God told them would happen.
That's right.
Yep. God knows. Even though we a lot of times would say, oh no, I would never do that, right? God knows. God knows our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then Gideon. What can you tell me about Gideon?
He was the weakest and
Yes, he was. He was very, I think it was the thing that just stood out to me during that first part. It says the angel came, this is in verse 11 of chapter 6. The angel came and sat down on the oak of Ophrah, that belonged to Joash the Abizrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. And the angel said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. But how did he respond? He said, pardon me, but if the Lord is with us, why did all this happen to us? It's like he completely missed that last part that said mighty warrior.
Mm-hmm.
He just,
It's kind of like, are you sure you got the right guy?
yeah. And then he starts talking about how he's the least in his family and his family the least in Manasseh and all of that kind of stuff. But that very first time, it's like he didn't even hear the mighty warrior part. It's just, the Lord is with you. And if he's with us, how come all this bad stuff is happening? Well, it's all this bad stuff is happening because you all have turned away. God is still with them, but they've turned their backs on God. And we need to learn that as well. So, what did Gideon do?
He wanted proof.
He wanted
He was
proof.
talking to him that he was going to succeed.
Now, I've heard people in the past that talked about how if you're wanting to know God's will in a situation, to put out the fleece, like Gideon did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not exactly what Bible is teaching us here.
That's right. We're not Gideon.
We're not Gideon. And the other thing is, God told Gideon what to do, right? It wasn't that he had any question about what God's will was. He was just scared. And so he put out the fleece 2 different times, wanting different things, because he wanted to, I guess, assure himself that God told him that. Well, he knew God told him that. There wasn't, I don't think there was any doubt in his mind. Truthfully, I think he might have been just trying to get out of it. Anyone else that reminds you of? A few hundred years before that that made all the different excuses. How about Moses?
I'm slow
Yeah.
of speech.
Yeah. I can't talk. Who am I? I'm nobody. Send somebody else. No. And God was very patient with Gideon. And I want you to know he's very patient with us too. But putting out the fleece is not the proper thing to do. The proper thing to do is God tells you to do something, do it. So, yeah. He did. And then after that, God even gave him another opportunity to get some confidence. What was that?
When they went down to see the troops, because
Yes.
they knew what they were talking about.
And listened to the troops, and they told the story. One of them had a dream about I don't remember how it said, it's almost like a tumbleweed rolled down into camp and destroyed the whole camp. And the other one said, oh, well, that's Gideon. How did they know his name? That's what I wanted to know. Here he was scared. He didn't want to do all this, but they knew who he was. And then God whittled down his army from 20,000 down to what? 300. So first he told them anybody who's scared to go home, which makes sense, right? We talked about that before. And then he has them go and it's kind of hard to grasp exactly the way it says it. I think a lot of it is translation the way it is. But from what I understand, most of the men laid down and put their face right in the water to get a drink. 300 of them squatted down, picked up water and brought it up to their mouths so they could see what was still going on. So you have probably the best, the ones that weren't scared, the ones that were aware of everything. Those are the ones that he took to do battle. What did they do in the battle? They had a jar with a light in it, and they had a trumpet. And when that time came, they were to break that jar open so that they had the torch in one hand, the trumpet in the other hand. What did they fight with?
They didn't have to fight.
They didn't have to fight. That's right.
Yeah, they just caused so much confusion, they couldn't fit their God did. God did.
Probably turned on themselves.
Yes, I think they did. I think the Midianites turned on themselves, killed each other, killed other people that were with them, and then they took off running. Then they started following them. And I guess at that point they tried to, they were killing them as they went. So they'd have to either put the trumpet down or the torch down or maybe both down and then take their swords. But that original battle, they didn't do anything. Break the jars and blow the trumpets and yell. God did everything else. And then I noticed from what she said today, I think it was today, about how Gideon asked for all of this gold and he made an ephod. And what's wrong with that?
Only the high priest.
Only the priest has the ephod. And it said that they worshipped, the children of Israel in that area started worshiping the ephod instead of worshiping God. So it became a snare, became an idol. A lot of other things through the years that has happened as well. The bronze snake on the pole, they began to worship it. The temple, they began to worship the temple. And I think that's one of the reasons that God ultimately took it away.
I don't understand why the Manasseh and that other Gad would not do anything to help those people that
Right.
needed a little bit of food. So that's not what God wanted.
Right.
I mean, these tribes are supposed to be helping each other, if not by fighting, but
Yes.
helping the troops that were.
Yep. And one of those was East Manasseh, and Gideon and them were from West Manasseh, just across the Jordan. They were their closest relatives, and that they refused to help. Now, she did talk about how those things, when he came back and he whipped the leaders of that town with briar, the thorns and stuff, and then tore down the tower of the other town. God is not mentioned in any of that. So a lot of that was probably just something that Gideon himself decided to do.
He kind of changed his tune. He got maybe too big for his britches.
Yes, I think so too.
He got big head.
Yep. I think so.
Even the name one of his sons, my father's.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And then we go to one of his sons, that same one, Abimelech. Now, Abimelech was not one of the judges, okay? This is just a continuation of the story of Gideon. But Abimelech, he was son of a concubine, so was not the main wife of Gideon, but he killed, well, they said 70 sons, so either he had 71 or that he killed 69, because one of them got away. And that was the youngest one. And he went on Mount Gerizim, which is the mountain of blessing. Mount Ebal was the mountain of cursing. But he went on Mount Gerizim. I showed you a picture of those last week. And then he pronounced a curse on him. Said, well, look, if you did this for the right reasons, then make it. Yes. Yeah. If they got him to be king for the right reasons, then fine. But if they did it in the wrong reasons and were not being true to Gideon by what they did, then may Abimelech turn against the city of Shechem, and the people of Shechem turn against Abimelech, and that's exactly what happened. They got to fighting each other, and then I did like the fact that she brought this out too, was that he killed the 70 sons on one stone, which is probably an altar to one of to Baal or something like that. But then he was killed by a stone, which is very ironic. You find a lot of that in the Bible.
These guys have to think about the woman.
Yeah, and
injuring him and killed
yes.
him.
Yeah, I think there's 7 instances or 7 stories of suicide in the Bible, and that's I think that's the first one. I'm trying to remember who the others are, but I think that's the first one. Okay. Make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Yeah, Jephthah is next. Actually, Tola, and he's got 1 or 2 verses, and then Jair has a couple of verses, and then Jephthah. Jephthah's the next one with the big long story, and he made a rash oath, and we'll read about that tomorrow. Anything else? I know, I'm a little early again. Part of it is we haven't spent a lot of time doing prayer requests and everything.
I have class after this, so I'm kind of glad.
Yes. All right, well, let's stand and sing our dismissal chorus, and I'm just assuming that you have one. I don't see it back there, but up here.